It's difficult to pick a starting point when discussing the rise of Cyrus, but I'll start at the same place where the ancient author Herodotus started, when he wished to inquire about Cyrus and the Medes. And that's with a man named Astyages, who was the king of the Median Empire, which is the dominant power in Asia at the time of Cyrus's birth. Astyages is known as this mad king and corrupted by his wealth, and you'll see examples as to why as we continue on. I think of him as to almost the embodiment as to why monarchy doesn't work. Because although his father Cyaxares was considered this tough, great leader, Astyages was nowhere near his father in terms of greatness. Now, Astyages had a daughter named Mundane, and he has this dream about his daughter, and it's a strange one. He dreams that his daughter urinated so much that she filled up his city and flooded all Asia with her urine. Right, some wild stuff. Now here I'll quote the historian Tom Holland in his book Persian Fire. Such was the value ascribed by the Medes to visions of this kind, that a whole class, the Magi, existed to define what their meaning might be. So Astyages reports the dream to the Magi, his dream readers, and basically they tell him that it's a bad omen, and that this dream means that his daughter's child would replace Astyages as king. And obviously when he hears this, he becomes extremely concerned. And in order to, you could say, dodge his fate, when Astyages' daughter Mundane reaches the age for marriage, he didn't give her to another Mede of his own rank, but to a Persian named Cambyses. Now this Cambyses was from a good family and had a peaceful disposition. However, Astyages considered him much lower in status than even a middle-class Mede. And that's due to him purely just to being a Persian, Herodotus says. And therefore Astyages must have thought a child in those days born of a father of low rank could never have bothered the king. Now in her first year of marriage to Cambyses, Mundane falls pregnant. And that's when Astyages has another dream. This time, he saw a vine growing out from his daughter's womb, covering all of Asia. And of course, again, he runs to the Magi and they tell him that again, it's a serious omen. And this means her son will replace you as king. And as you can imagine, this mad king becomes even more paranoid. To prevent the omen or the prophecy of his dreams coming true, when Cyrus was born, Astyages summoned Harpagus, a relative who looked after his affairs, and Herodotus says whom he trusted more than any other Mede. And he tells Harpagus, quote, "Take the son Mundane has born, carry him home, and kill him." Now, Harpagus agrees to do so because he was ordered by the king, so he pretty much has to. And then Harpagus goes home and tells his wife what Astyages the king wants him to do. And he says to his wife, quote, "No, not even if he were to lose his mind and become more insane than he is now would I follow his orders and commit such a murder. There are many reasons I will not murder this boy. First of all, he is related to me. And besides, Astyages is old and without a male heir. And then again, if the child and the sovereignty were to pass to Astyages' daughter, whose son he seeks to have me kill, what is left for me but the gravest danger? Yet for the sake of my present security, the boy must die. The murderer, however, should come from the household of Astyages, not from mine." So Harpagus decides not to carry out the murder himself, but passes off the task of killing Cyrus to a cowherd named Mithridates. And Harpagus says these words to him: "Astyages orders you to take this child and abandon it in the most desolate spot on the mountains, so that it will die as quickly as possible. And he has ordered me to tell you that if you do not kill the child, but keep it alive somehow, you will suffer a very painful and violent death. And I have been appointed to inspect the child's corpse after its exposure." So then, Mithridates takes the child and tells the whole story to his wife, who has herself just given birth to a stillborn. Right, so you can imagine what happens next, and imagine for a second and you'd be right. They take the dead child, give that to Harpagus, and instead raise the son of Astyages' daughter as their own. Now to quote the wife of Mithridates, "Our clever scheme will benefit us greatly. You will not be caught defying those you serve. Our dead child will get a royal burial, and the surviving child will not lose his life." So Mithridates carried out the plan, went to the representatives of Harpagus, they came, saw the dead infant, and were convinced. Okay, so all was good, well in the world, and everybody lived happily ever after. Okay, obviously that's not true, because there was one thing Mithridates and his wife didn't count on, and I'll describe what happened now. At about 10 years old, this young boy, the so-called son of a cowherd, is brought before Astyages, because his whipping boy is higher on the social standing scale than his. Apparently they were playing a game where they appointed Cyrus as king, and this particular boy wasn't obeying his orders, so he whipped him. And straight away when this boy is brought in front of Astyages, Astyages can tell this boy is a king or is descended from a king. Almost as if to become a king was an inherited ability, where kingship and leadership are passed down from generation to generation. And plus he can tell this kid kind of looks like him because after all he is his grandson. So what Astyages does is he interrogates Mithridates, Cyrus's father at the time, and he discovers the truth. And Astyages pretends that he's not angry with Harpagus. He says things like, "I've always kind of felt bad about the incident and it's a relief to see the child's okay." However, in reality, the punishment Harpagus receives for this is nothing short of horrific. And I'll describe what happened now. So he invites Harpagus to a dinner and says, "Bring your son along and he can play with Cyrus, this new boy, because they're roughly the same age." And when the son of Harpagus comes to Astyages, he has him killed, cut up, and served to Harpagus at the dinner. And after eating, they brought in the boy's head, hands, and feet covered on a dish and told him to lift the lid and take what he fancied. Quote, "Harpagus obediently took off the cover and saw the remains of his son. But instead of reacting with shock at the sight, he contained himself. When Astyages asked him whether he knew what meat he had eaten, he replied that he knew, and that it was pleasing, as was everything that the king did. After replying thus, he picked up his son's remains and went home. There, I assume, he buried all the remains that he had been able to gather together. That was the punishment Astyages inflicted on Harpagus." Now you might be thinking, what an absolute jerk, but don't stress too much because he gets what's coming to him in the end. Now after this, the Magi have now all of a sudden decided that Astyages has nothing to fear from Cyrus. So he apologizes to Cyrus for basically trying to kill him as an infant and sends him back to his true parents in Persia. Now to quote Herodotus, "Cyrus grew into manhood and was the most stalwart of his peers, as well as the most popular. Meanwhile, Harpagus worked to establish ties with him by sending him gifts, although his real desire was for revenge on Astyages. He saw that his status as a mere private citizen, one who held no official position, meant that he would not be able to take vengeance on Astyages directly, and so, as he saw Cyrus grow into manhood, he formed an alliance with him, identifying Cyrus's ordeals with his own. Even before this, he had achieved something towards his goal, for Astyages had begun to treat the Medes harshly, and Harpagus mingled with the most prominent Medes one by one, and persuaded them to work to end the reign of Astyages and make Cyrus their leader instead." Okay, so Harpagus sends a scroll to Cyrus, which reads, quote, "Son of Cambyses, the gods are watching over you. Otherwise you could never have come into such good fortune. Now is the time to take revenge on Astyages, who chose to be your murderer. For it was his will that you were to be killed, but by the will of the gods and myself, you are alive. I suppose that you have known for a long time of what I did for you, and of how I suffered at the hands of Astyages because I did not kill you, but instead gave you to the herdsmen. Now, if you will take my advice, you will come to rule the entire land over which Astyages now rules, if you will persuade the Persians to revolt and march against the Medes. It will not matter whether I or any other eminent Mede is appointed by Astyages to serve as general against you. You shall have anything you want, for these Medes will be the first to revolt against him and come over to your side, and they will strive to bring him down. And so, since all is in readiness for you here, make your move now, and with all dispatch." So Cyrus assembles his Persians and offers them a rich and prosperous life if they follow him and revolt against the Medes. And they are persuaded by Cyrus and agree. Now one more quote from Herodotus. "Now the Persians enthusiastically accepted Cyrus's offer to be their leader and approved his proposal that they should liberate themselves, since they had for a long time felt that to be ruled by the Medes was intolerable. When Astyages found out what Cyrus was doing, he sent a messenger and summoned him to the palace. Cyrus commanded the messenger to report back to Astyages that he would be in the king's presence sooner than the king would wish. When Astyages heard this, he armed all the Medes, and because he was unbalanced by the god, he appointed Harpagus as his general, forgetting the outrage he had inflicted upon him previously. Now why Astyages appoints Harpagus as his general is beyond me and makes no sense. But if you believe that he was this mad king, then I guess it's not really meant to. But as we'll see in a second, he lives to regret it. Because in a key battle against Cyrus, Astyages has a large part of his army desert him to the Persians, and Astyages is eventually captured. which fits into a key theme in Herodotus' writings, a theme that we've talked about before: retribution and justice. When Astyages' army revolts against him, he kills the Magi that said Cyrus was no longer a problem. So Cyrus became the first Persian king of Asia, and he reigns as king for 20 years, from 550 to 530 BC. Now, what he did whilst he was king, you could say was even greater. There's a reason why he's called Cyrus the Great, but that's beyond the scope of this video. Now, what I'll leave you with is a quote from the historian Tom Holland in his book Persian Fire. And then suddenly, in 550 BC, it was over. Even the gods, it appeared, were taken by surprise. They suddenly began appearing in dreams of neighbouring kings to broadcast the startling news. Cyrus scattered the large armies of the Medes with his small army, and he captured Astyages, king of the Medes, and he took him to his country as captive. Not since the downfall of Assyria had there been an upset on such a scale.